Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael DiBella. I'm here representing not only the Alliance, but Anixter. It's an absolute privilege to be here. Appreciate everybody's time. I know that on the final day, we're creeping up on that lunch hour. So I'm going to do something a little different here today. I'm not going to talk about technology. I'm not going to talk about anything technical. What I'd like everybody to do is picture themselves as a business owner and have an understanding that the world as we know it, the business world as we know it, has completely changed. Everything that we know about business has changed. Let's have an example for a second. We're all entrepreneurs here. We're going to open up a company. We're going to open up the world's largest livery service. We're going to compete with Uber. We're going to compete with local taxis. The first thing that you're going to need to do is invest in cars, right? No. You could own the world's largest livery service with 0 cars. Think about that. A day and age where you have a transportation company with 0 cars. The next thing you need to do as that business owner for transportation is you need to have people to work for you, which means you need to attract talent. So what's the first thing you're going to do, right? You're going to throw money at them. I need Brooke to work for me. She's a creative genius. LinkedIn just came out with a survey saying that specifically within millennials, who, by the way, occupy over 50% of our workforce, they're more apt to sign on to a company by 86% based on core values over money. So let's take a step back. I now have a transportation company with no cars. I'm attracting the world's best talent by not offering them a lot of money, by showing core values. Okay. So now I got Brooke on my company. She's starting. I want her right away to start producing. And I think that this could happen pretty quickly, right? There's no real expenses. Incorrect. It's going to take roughly 1 to 2% of my annual revenue to go out the door before Brooke starts producing. And by the way, it could take up to 26 weeks, a half a year before I see anything. So let's refresh. I started a transportation business with no automobiles. I have the top talent, and I'm not worried about paying them. And it's going to take up to a half a year before I get that return. So now when Brooke and her friends and they come work for my company and they're producing and they're collaborating, what do I need to do? I need to make an investment in technology to allow them to do their jobs. So what's the next step? The CFO, the CTO, they're going to ask you what return on all of those black boxes that they're going to get from a financial aspect. Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me for all of these years that we've been showing up at Infocomm and moving all kinds of black boxes, no one's ever asked us about ROI? Today in 2019, this is a crucial element to any kind of technology buy. We have to show ROI on each one of these black boxes that is immediately to my left. Question is how? But before we get to the how, let's answer the question why. Why do I need to show ROI on these black boxes? Well, it begins with we have more meeting space than ever before. Not too long ago, companies had 1 or 2 large conference rooms. Now, of course, as we all know, huddle spaces are dominating. Companies are producing hundreds of these spaces. On top of it, we have more interconnectivity amongst each other on content. And let's remember, people, what is AV all designed to do? Simple. Move content from source to display. That's what each one of these companies here on the show floor is here to do. And in order to do that, as we all know, we all carry on average 2.5 mobile devices with us at all times. Tablets, phones, of course, your laptop. So we have more of these devices that needs more connectivity into more of these spaces. And on top of it, we have roughly a 2 to 3% unemployment rate. What does that mean? Employment, there are more employees than ever before. So you have more people with more devices needing more spaces. What does that equal? Roughly $3.85 trillion. Trillion dollars will be spent this year in technology. Now, I don't know about you. I make slightly less than 3.85 trillion, little less. So let's put that in comparison. We all know that the U.S. likes to spend a lot of money as a country. We spend less annually as a country than IT is going to buy. That is a staggering number. This is the U.S. We're not some little island, right? So you ask your question, why? It's because your owners, your shareholders, your board of directors, your senior executives, when they give you that money, they're going to want to know what they're getting back in return. It's not being done for the sake of just purchasing. We have to be able to generate ROI. So now that we've kind of set the stage, we have a general understanding, let's talk about your reality, today's business world's reality. Not the manufacturers, not the organizations. The first thing is, every organization has very specific technology needs. So many manufacturers here today are going to cookie cut, template, all this technology and say one size fits all. That is not true. Why is that? Because the culture of every company is very different. And I'll do you one better. The culture of your company is going to change faster than the R&D roadmaps of every company here, which means that you're going to need interoperability. The other little thing that goes on here that no one likes to talk about, and the reason why people often don't like me, is I'm here to say that every one of the manufacturers here have limitations. They like to say they can do everything, but they can't. There are certain things they do amazingly, but then there are other things they say they can do, but they can't do them that well. Why should you do without because of a limitation? You should be able to shop at multiple places. Diversity. I'm not talking about diversity within a workplace as people. I'm talking about diversity within the technology that we're utilizing. We have people here with iPhones. We have people who are Android, PCs, Macs. We have all these different platforms. We have all these different technologies. I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a little north of 40. I don't want to admit how much north. We have a lot of people here today who are very well south of 40. We use technology differently. We cannot have a single platform, a single technology that's able to communicate with both of us. It makes no sense. We also, as an organization, our transportation company, we have to mitigate dependence on single manufacturers. Because when we were dependent on those manufacturers, the problem is that we cannot scale. And we know that we have to be able to scale to keep up with today's needs, keep up with talent, keep up with all these other aspects. As an organization, I'm talking about how we have to scale. We need to bring in more technology, different technology, change technologies. What does that mean? We need to have a hybrid system, something that allows for all of this. And it all leads into the big two, people. First, standardization. One of the biggest trends in our marketplace today, and it cannot be understated. Corporations, especially those who have decentralized locations, have to allow their sales force, their employees, whoever it is, to walk into all of the different offices, have the technology look identical. Why? Productivity. I need to be able to come in, plug in, have my content, have my meeting, regardless of location, and know how it's going to work. Oh yeah, by the way, here's a crazy thought to everybody here. It's got to work. And every time I talk about this, every integrator, every end user always laughs. Because we've all been there. We invest all this money. We go into the rack. We do all this construction, reprogram. We do all this stuff. Then I plug in my laptop and there's no content. Or maybe there is content, but it's fuzzy and you can't see it. This is today's reality. And I like to ask everybody here, how many of you guys are thinking about your clients in this way? Because I'll tell you, every end user is thinking about these things. So now that we understand what your business is like, let's talk about this show floor. And this is where I really begin to make enemies. There are myths being told on this show floor right now. The first one is, you need to come to me, brand A, and have a certified system. It's got to be DiBella certified, or else I'm not going to service it. I can't promise it's going to work. What? You can't promise your system's going to work if I touch some other part? That makes no sense. The reality is it needs to be certified, which is a fancy way of saying I need to force you to buy my stuff so I can hit my numbers. I don't care about what your needs are, and those needs I just covered on the other slide. Which brings us into, you need to have our system because we have proprietary software, proprietary hardware. Fancy words. Sounds great. I'm a marketing guy. I get it. Know what proprietary means? I don't talk to anybody else. I don't understand your language. More importantly, I cannot work with you. Doesn't really go a lot for diversity now, does it? And lastly, and Justin Kennington touched upon some of these aspects, is once those signals show up, based on the system that you're using, the signal is going to be interpreted. Think about that. Let's not get lost in words here. Interpretation. When we have interpersonal conversations, if I'm talking to Brooke, and I hear her say something, and I'm interpreting, I think you mean this. I have the ability to go, hey, Brooke, what did you really mean? And she'll say, no, Michael, I meant this. When your source hits the display, and that display interprets that AV signal, because today, or yesterday's standards rather, are thinking what it means you're not going to get your content. And you say, hey, what's the importance? So what? I fiddle with things. ROI, people. Your entire job when you're collaborating in that meeting space, you're being paid. That company is paying you to interact, produce content. What does all this equal? Obviously, people, it's not interoperable. It's not sustainable. You cannot sustain a long-term business doing technology this way. And most importantly, in red here, because I'm not all that creative, it's not financially justifiable. When your CFO, when your CTO gives you all that money to furnish those 500 huddle rooms, you can't justify that spend, which means ownership isn't going to like it, and I assure you shareholders are not going to like that. So we've already addressed what your reality is, right? So we know what you need to get out of technology. We know what you need to do. How do you get to ROI? Well, you got to bridge that gap. So first of all, the beauty of the alliance here is the fact that it is a global standard. So we've already established that most corporations are going to have different offices throughout not only the country, but probably the world. Especially think of the large banks that are here, some of the universities, things like that. I can now build a space using this standard and know that wherever I deploy this technology, wherever I put this platform, it's going to work. My employees are going to know how to use it. The other aspect is you're going to have complete assurance that when I plug it in, not only is it going to work, but the signal that I've asked it to send up there is actually going to be there. And I know you guys are sitting here and you're listening to me and you look at this slide and you go, well, of course, DiBella. I'm like, that just makes sense. The 30 or 40 members of this alliance are the only ones who are doing this. There's thousands of manufacturers here that you've all walked into their booths who cannot. And then the last part is, as you guys walk this show floor and you bump into a manufacturer who's doing something cool. Wow, that's awesome. We've all done it. Some cool stuff going on here. Have any of you, when you say, I'm thinking I'm buying that, I can put this into all these huddle space, I can do whatever. What we have not done is we have not looked and said, hey, when I plug this in, can my system receive this signal and do what I saw on that show floor? The answer is no, with the exception of the names who are on this wall. So we have a complete disconnect between people who are here and what your business needs are. It's not about technology. So we now know what the reality that the Alliance brings to us, or what it is rather. What does it mean for you, the enterprise, right? So what it allows is every time there's a meeting space, and you look at another trend, right? Millennial-driven behavior, less structured meetings. That's why you need these huddle spaces, and there's more of them. So when they jump into that huddle space, you know it's going to work. Those rooms are going to be up and running and functional faster. It allows you the flexibility to use the best manufacturers at what they do. You could truly shop at booth A, B, C, and D, bring the best of those products, bring them together, and it's going to work. You don't no longer have to say, well, I've already standardized on yours, and I know you're doing something, and it doesn't really work well, but I have to use it because your box will only talk to your box, doesn't talk to this guy's box, so it's not going to work. Ridiculous. The other aspect, and anyone my age or older is going to get a chuckle out of this. For years, manufacturers sold into their customers technologies and platforms that when they got plugged in, they were so complex, you didn't use them. Spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on conferencing and connectivity that went unused because employees like me who aren't technically savvy walk in. In fact, it just happened, right? How do I get my source up there? Now here I have to get my source up, and there's smart guys who know how to help me. In a conference room, what are you going to do? Either you're not going to use the technology, no ROI, or you're going to call the help desk, which is going to drain revenue. We've talked about dependable content delivery. If you're doing a sales presentation, you've flown across the country, you've put together this incredible pitch. If you can't get that content up there, you're going to lose that sale. It is mission critical that you were able to distribute this. And what happens at the end, right? Increased productivity is the soft dollar sale, right? Your workers are actually working. There was a study put out about 2 years ago that said the average meeting, the first 8 minutes are completely wasted using technology. No one knows how to use it. What if you're a law firm? You're billing by the hour. Are you going to lose that time? Multiply that over 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, 300 days a year. It is significant waste. And we talked about scalability, right? You see something cool. I want to buy it. I'm going to put it into this beta room. You got to be able to do it. The other side is because it's a beta room, maybe it wasn't all that cool. You need to be able to take it out. You still need the basic platform system to work. The Alliance allows for that. So let's dig in even deeper as we get into the ROI aspect, right? So what the Alliance is able to do is give you a platform, standardize on a platform that allows you to do true best practices for the rollouts. Those rooms are standardized. They all look the same in terms of technology. You can now develop the best way to approach it in terms of that connectivity. Leveraging the best products of each manufacturer. And we all know who the giants are out there. Those giant manufacturers who are amazing at switching. I'm not going to take anything away from them. But then they also jump into the wireless connectivity market. What do they know about that? Their hardware. What do they know about software? I've seen some companies jump in and try to compete with video cameras. You guys know AV routing, not video cameras. Different technologies. But if you standardize on their foundational signal routing, now you have to put in all that other stuff that they sell, which may or may not be good, because you have to, because again, it's proprietary. Only talks to each other. Now for the big guns. Chris knows this more than anybody. He's built an entire business on these concepts. When Chris, who's one of the leading experts in technology, and also one of the biggest investors in technology, hands out his funds to invest into those spaces, he needs to have an understanding that it's going to come across, right? So it's twofold, right? There's a certain amount of hard dollar cost, which I'll get into, but it really kind of begins on soft dollar. Room's going to be up. You're going to use it. You're going to be faster. You're going to have quicker meetings, more productive. That's a large aspect of what people are looking for. The other piece, remember that first slide, and I was talking about those employees that you're bringing in. One of the other interesting trends as it relates to millennial behavior is because they're so used to technology, you could almost argue dependent on it, they need to have that same use of technology when they get into the workforce. So if they're checking into a job every day and they can't access technology, they can't use technology, the technology doesn't work, they carry with them technology that works every day. What does all this mean? You're going to lose them. And remember, you just spent 6 months onboarding them and lost 1.5% of your revenue bringing them on. You don't want to lose them after 6 months. Once you have this standardized system, the other aspect is we get to look in on those spaces and measure what's being used, how it's being used, what devices are being used, and then make changes, upgrades based on data. Not based on because you like this vendor, you have a relationship, these different aspects. No. Prescriptive and qualitative data will allow you to make these changes, justify those spends. Obviously, you're able to get more out of these platforms. Just as our cell phones and tablets, if you ask my 7-year-old mother what a tablet's for, she's going to tell you updating Facebook, right? You know, playing Words with Friends. A tablet is a complex piece of technology that allows business to happen, right? We all know the capabilities. But if we're not using it for all that it's intended for, we're losing money. This, to me, is the big one. Is anybody here from IT? So 50, 60 of you are? That's fantastic. So from an IT aspect, right? I'm one of these guys. I plug something in, doesn't work. What do? I call you. What do you do? Ugh. Right, DiBella, this is what you got to do. You got to do whatever, right? You're stopping what your main functions are. I'm not working. Stated differently, if I could create an environment where I don't have to call you, no offense, I'm sure you're wonderful, it frees you up to go do other things. Build more rooms, put in more technology, those kinds of things. It makes you a better, more productive employee. The other aspect is maybe you happen to, this is a company, you happen to have an IT department. What we've seen is outsourcing of IT, right? That means there's a bill associated to that. So if the problems are big enough, whether it's your AV integrator, IT, whatever, there's an ad hoc bill to when these black boxes don't talk to each other. So you now have to go up to your CFO and say, hey, man, thanks for those hundreds of thousands of dollars that you gave me on technology that I've now plugged in, which kind of don't work. So I had to call the integrator. They had to fix it, which cost you an additional 5% on top of that overall spend just to get it up and running. The SDVoE Alliance fixes that. Nobody wants to have this conversation. And then the other aspect, and here's another dirty little secret of why people don't like Michael DiBella. People like to talk about future-proofing. How many of you guys heard that term over the last 3 days? Everyone. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. How many of you guys bought a TV 15 years ago and still have it? Was it future-proof? No. Everything gets upgraded. More bandwidth, more functionality. Behaviors change. Things get invented. We have to be able to refresh and scale. Refreshes went from every 7 to 10 years down to 3 years. 3. So let's have some fun. So we began this conversation by talking about we all own the business. As a refresher, we own a transportation company with a fleet of 0 cars. We have all these millennials working for us that aren't concerned with money. And now we got to show ROI. Think about Uber. World's largest transportation company with 0 cars. If you find a partner who's utilizing the SDVoE standard, you now obviously get to leverage all of the things that I've been talking about. From that point, if you're lucky, you could find a partner who could scale those spaces, depending on the size of your business, anywhere from locally to globally, leaning on a very complex supply and logistical chain that you no longer have to worry about because your partner, your supplier, is managing all of this, and they have the common standard to allow for interoperable communication. Now you have this amazing platform. Everybody's using it. You're maximizing productivity. And oh, by the way, you can now have it completely networked, managed, and controlled. You can now look in on that system, what's being used, how it's being used, everything I already talked about. And then when your boss comes in and says, hey, what'd you do with that money? You can now show them. This isn't hyperbole. This is real world. This is what my company does. This is what each one of our partners do. This is what your boss is expecting you to do. So as I wrap things up, we have to understand that our business has changed. I'm sorry. The names up here may not have, but how we go about business is different. 10 years ago, we would never talk ROI on this show floor. Never. It's all changed. And we have to be able to talk that language. We have to move away from technology that only talks to each other. I'm going to steal an analogy from Justin Kennington, who presented earlier. The analogy that he used is, imagine you're an IT guy. You have a Dell laptop. You have an HP laptop. Imagine if you created a business to where you two are both working together, but you can't share content. You can't email him. I can't email him. He's on a Dell. Well, what do you mean? He's on a Lenovo. But because you're all using Windows, you actually can work together. These black boxes do not do that yet. The combination of all the logos up on this screen, up on this wall, allow you to make hybrid systems. You're not stuck. It opens up the doors as to what you can do. And I'm going to go back to culture. Millennials, 50% of our workforce. It's more than 50% of my audience right now. They are changing their behaviors fast. Okay? A single manufacturer cannot change that fast. Multiple manufacturers can. Of course, the downstream, I've hit it a bunch of times. Productive, it gets used, it's reliable, all that kind of fun stuff. And the bottom line is, by leveraging the alliance and all of the partners in that alliance, the combination of them all allow you to justify spends. And the first words out of my mouth here is I'm not going to talk about technology. Not. And I haven't. We are all given budgets. We all have to be able to report back to our shareholders, to our owners, what happened with it. Each one of these trade shows or manufacturers on this trade show floor is run by a marketing department. The second those VPs of marketing go back, Janet's in marketing. She is. First question that she's going to be asked, how many leads did you get? Right? Let's do the analytics. We know that. We kind of smirk. We get it. Technology is exactly the same way now because of all of these things. And that's all I got for you guys. I hope this has been impactful. I hope you had fun. I hope you guys have a lunch and a Bloody Mary along the way as well.